Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll call the meeting, the Design Review Board, to order. Dean, if you have roll call, please.
Yes. Well, Board Member Helzer.
Here.
Board Member Noonan.
Here.
Board Member Kitchen.
Here.
Board Member Butler. Chair Martins.
Present.
That gives us a quorum of 4, so we do have sufficient numbers to conduct a meeting and conduct business. I would ask Margie to confirm that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice had been provided of today's meeting.
I can confirm that the packet was posted and the required notice of today's meeting was provided.
I'll also note that Board Member Butler just joined us.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
Board Member Butler is present, so we have a quorum of 5, and we have provided proper notice, so we have jurisdiction to proceed with today's agenda.
Okay, well, thank you. Guess the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the April 22nd, 2021 special meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review those. Are there any additions, corrections, or changes? No. If not, I'll accept a motion to approve.
I so move.
Katie moves. A second.
Seconded.
Second from Jennifer. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed? Same sign? All right, thank you. All right then, minutes approved. New business, the first item, application CC 21-5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application filed by Brian Richardson on behalf of SK Realty, which is the record owner of this building. And the request is for approval of a certificate of compatibility to allow the installation of new awnings and signage on the exterior of the building, as well as 2 new glass door openings on the iron facade to accommodate some changes that are being made to tenant lease areas. And so the building on this property, from our research, dates back to 1895, the original construction. And looking at the files, this was commonly referred to as the Public Utilities Building because at one time it served as the local offices for Kansas Power and Light. And the building was substantially renovated in 1950, and that renovation gave it its current, more modern look. And there actually was a proposal in 1992 from the then owner to demolish the building, but that proposal was denied by the State Historic Preservation Office, not because of this building, but because at the time there was a review of projects that were in the proximity to the Smoky Hill Museum, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. Then there was a case in 1995 where this board approved the removal of an existing metal canopy that ran all along Iron Avenue and was replaced by a fabric awning, and those fabric awnings have been changed out periodically over time. That's what the proposal is here, is to propose changing out the existing blue awnings along Iron and the 7th Street wraparound frontage, including the current Wells Fargo tenant space, and to replace those with awnings that are predominantly in a red color scheme. And so we have provided elevation drawings depicting the proposed facade changes. The building owner is also proposing to add 2 new glass doors facing Iron to serve Wells Fargo, which is downsizing, and then another space. So Mr. Richardson can help me, but as I understand it, 1 new door is going right there next to this.
I think it's farther.
You think
one
it's-
of them would be up on this end.
Okay,
Up by this column closest to you.
right here or here?
There, right there.
Okay, so there,
You can see the bottom of that. That one was taken. There used to be a door there. That's why
So-
the different color of the.
so it would be replace this storefront window with a doorway, and then there's, with the downsizing, I believe the other doors located right there,
It's going to be farther east,
you think? To the next one over?
past the other one. Yep.
Okay, so the Wells Fargo space is being narrowed up, and so they're moving their door, and so there have been various tenant remodels here based on the configuration of the office space, and there have been doors installed and doors removed, and I think, Dustin, somewhere in there, we had a cut sheet provided by the contractor of what the door was going to look like. If not, we do have it in your packet. We have a floor plan there for Wells Fargo, and then there was a plan there. So it's going to be a door that is going to blend in with the existing storefront pattern and glass, and would match in with the color of the trim. So the two doorway added should not really be noticeable, and the only real change to the awnings is primarily the color scheme. And so, since it's pretty much a like-for-like replacement, we don't believe that the awning will cover up or obscure any significant architectural features on the facade. The applicant states that the two colors for the fabric were chosen to match the red and blue color highlights present in the Spanish tile located at the storefront cornice, and the white lettering was chosen to make the business signage more readable. So from what we can tell, since 1995, there hasn't been any real increase in the vertical size of the awnings, and it's primarily been replacement of awnings in their current configuration. So as far as suggested findings, we found that the proposed replacement awning will not be installed where it will interfere with or cover the building's decorative architectural details. The proposed replacement awning will be compatible with the material style and overall color scheme of the building. The proposed replacement awning will complement the scale of the building, won't obscure any character-defining features or significant architectural features, and the signage appears to be proportional to the building, so it's not going to dominate the appearance of the building. So your options on this application would be to approve the certificate of compatibility for the awning replacement, as well as the installation of the two doors based on finding that it conforms with our downtown design guidelines. You could approve it subject to any specific conditions you wanted to place on it. You could postpone this if you feel like you need additional information concerning the proposal, or you could deny the application. Following any additional information you want to obtain from the applicant, our recommendation would be to approve this with our kind of standard condition that if there's any significant changes to what you have approved, that will be notified and determine whether additional staff or board review will be required. So with that, open to any questions you have, or we can go back and look at any of the slides that we put in there.
Okay. Any comments or questions from anyone? No? Mr. Richardson, Brian, anything you'd like to add?
I don't.
You're good?
but
Okay.
anything you might have.
Okay, thank you. All right, then, if that's the case, I'll accept a motion.
I will move to a motion that we recommend option number 2, that they come back to the board if they have any changes.
Okay, it's been
I'll
moved.
second it.
And Haley seconds. All right. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Brian. Motion carried.
That information to you in written form, Brian. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to 3.2. Is there anyone present representing the group?
Dustin, do we have anybody?
Mr. Wilson is with us online on Zoom.
Okay,
And
Okay.
I would like to disclose, I am a paid member of a work in progress, the studio, that it won't affect my decision-making at all, but I did want to disclose that before starting, so.
Okay, thank you. All
So, this is an application for a certificate of compatibility, and it involves several elements. One of it is exterior facade modifications along the 4th Street and to a lesser degree, the north side of the building. The installation of an exterior staircase and the construction of a rooftop patio on the building. And you're not necessarily reviewing or approving that, but the moving force is to expand the space occupied by the work-in-progress yoga studio as opposed to having an apartment in that east unit. So this is the original plan where we started, and this is primarily only useful because we established what the addressing plan would be, but you can see that the initial plan was to construct 3 apartment units, and that plan went before the Planning Commission in 2015. And the first change was that a yoga studio went in to the center unit there, that's 218, and now the proposal is to expand that into the space, which we'll kind of refer to as Phase 3C. So you had United Way building, and then there's a loft apartment above that. Then the next phase was an apartment building adjacent to the United Way. Then Phase 3B was establishment of a yoga studio, and then Phase 3C was supposed to be an apartment that would go in that east unit. And so we gave you quite a bit of background here in our report. In the Planning Commission reviewed a plan to convert this to apartments on the ground floor in November of 2015. In January 2017, interior renovations began while we were waiting for plans for what they were going to do with the exterior. So on March 13th, 2017, this board reviewed the plans for exterior modifications to these buildings, and some of the proposed changes were to remove glass block from the existing window openings on the clear story and replace that with bronze tone aluminum and glass windows on the north, east, and south facades. The opening of a existing brick infilled window, an existing window to accommodate a overhead door, the infill of an existing doorway and an overhead door with an entrance door with glass block, opening of 2 new doorways and infill of existing openings on the north facade ground floor, painting of masonry concrete headers, sills, and accents, creation of new patio areas out front and 6-foot wood fence enclosures north of the structure, and then there would be landscaping and sidewalk improvements outside of that. One of the things that were conditions of approval at that time was that at that time there was a plan for a garage that would have vehicles backing out onto 4th Street with not good visibility, so there was a requirement to install mirrors on the garage walls so that the vehicles backing out could see what was on the sidewalk and on 4th Street, getting properly assigning addresses and address numbers put on the building. And right after that was done, there were revised plans received in April of 2018, and those involved converting the center space into a yoga studio with 2 restrooms and a small locker room. And so there was a revised plan for how the property was going to be used. Also, at the end of 2018, we had a change of ownership. Was owned by Todd Michaelis and then became owned by Restore Properties. And so Work in Progress is a nonprofit yoga studio that's occupied that center building. The interior space has got an exercise common area, 2 restrooms, and a locker space. In 2018, this board approved 2 signs for that, to identify that business. One is a wall sign up on top of the building. The other one is a ground sign out in front. And so this board met on January 10th, 2019, and reviewed and approved those signs. So, as we understand it, the yoga studio is now proposing to expand into the apartment unit that fronts on South 4th Street, and to finish out that final tenant space, which is addressed as 206 South 4th Street. So, as we understand it, the scope is interior remodeling of the unit addressed as 206 South 4th, exterior modifications to the east and north facades of the building, installation of an exterior staircase on the north side of the building, and construction of a rooftop patio for use by the yoga studio. And so the things that we have that have been difficult for staff to keep track of is we're on our 3rd or 4th modification of the east facade, and we've done our best to try to keep track of and retain the things that this board has tried to make sure happens with that facade. One of the things that was proposed most recently was construction of a wood frame carport structure to serve the residents of the apartment, and it appears that that is now being abandoned. Just a clarification, in the C4 downtown district, if you have ground floor residential, you have to provide parking for your tenants. If you have commercial businesses, you're not required to provide parking. You can have on-street or use of public parking. So from what we can tell, the most recent action was in September of 2018. It appears that none of the changes that were approved by the Design Review Board, that none of the work was ever begun. So now we have a new proposal and another modified plan for the east facade, which appears to retain the overhead garage door and proposes to place cement lap siding in the upper portion of the facade. And so we have reviewed these. Our building inspectors have reviewed them. There are a lot of things that are unclear to us and trying to translate the plans, so we'll do the best we can. Based on the plans and based on what we see as the proposed height of the staircase, it appears that the staircase is much higher than the existing sidewall height of the building. So it appears that the project architect's proposing to raise the height of the roof and perhaps construct parapet walls around the rooftop patio. That's one interpretation of the plan. So one of the things that, well, we actually have several questions or need for clarification. One is, now that it's not an apartment, what is the intended use and purpose of the overhead door facing South 4th Street? And the second question is whether any of the cement lap siding would cover up the existing masonry facade, or if it's just extending above the existing roof height. Whether the project architect's proposing to raise the height of the existing roof, and which of the modifications proposed in 2018 either have been or will be made to the east facade. So Dustin, in that set of plans, do you have a copy of the set of plans approved in September of 2018? So this is the part that extends out to Walnut, but this is our 4th Street facade here. So in August of 2018, this plan was submitted, and it did not have an overhead door, and this was the plan for the facade that faced 4th Street. So now if you can go to the current proposed plan, Dustin. I think we have one that's more of a direct elevation. So this appears to be the new plan with the windows here, this door approximately the same, but this appears to be an overhead door instead of the window as it was proposed in 2018. And then it's unclear to staff whether it appears to us that this cement lap siding is coming down and covering up some of the existing masonry. And so we're unable to tell from the plans whether that is the case or whether there's some kind of parapet wall that's being built up here, and the cement lap siding is proposed for it. But one of the policies and the guidelines is that character-defining features of a building should be preserved. Historic facade material are among the character-defining features to preserve. So in our mind, when you have a masonry building and that masonry is part of the character-defining features of that building, that masonry exterior should be preserved and protected. And so it appears that the ratio of window and storefront openings is somewhat the same, but it also appears that a overhead door that was removed is now back, and so we're not clear about the purpose for that. So this building has existed in this location since 1911. Commercial uses have displaced residential dwellings in the north portion of the building over time. From what we can tell, no significant compromises have been made to the creamery building, except a small addition in 1986, and then there have been some windows that were infilled with brick. The renovations that you reviewed in 2018 retained the main structural elements of the creamery building while providing greater access for 3 separate tenants. Those changes mostly maintain the similar area of glass and transparency on the principal facade. The remaining masonry walls proposed to be cleaned, tuck-pointed, and repaired to provide a more consistent and uniform appearance. And some of the exposed masonry and concrete headers were to be painted black to accent the traditional building elements. And so in 2018, you found that plan maintained the character-defining features of the exterior walls, that the new and replacement windows and doors would match the appearance of the original windows and doors, and that the new alterations will be compatible with and preserve the historic character of the building. And so, we don't think that those same findings can be made for this revised proposal, for the current proposal, and that's primarily due to the proposal to install cement lap siding and to retain the overhead door. Staff does not believe that the cement lap siding is compatible with the historical character of the building, and we're not able to recommend approval of a certificate based on the plans and information submitted. So we would request that the project architect provide an itemized list of what design elements that were previously approved by this board are going to be carried out and which are not, and clarify whether there's a proposal to cover the existing masonry with cement lap siding, or whether that lap siding is going to be above the current roof elevation.
Can I ask a question regarding that?
Okay.
So the issue is the lap siding covering the brick. We're not necessarily having an issue with the lap siding itself. It's actually because the way the drawings look, that it's over the brick. I'm just
Well,
trying to get
yeah,
clarification.
it's a judgment call on whether you think adding cement lap siding, even if it's above the roof line, it would be compatible with the masonry exterior.
Okay.
But the design guidelines, you made a finding based on previous plans that those plans would preserve the historic character of the building. We don't believe that placing cement lap siding over existing masonry preserves the historic character of that facade.
But
And-
again, for further clarification,
Yeah.
do you have an objection to cement lap siding? Or
At
does the
all,
department as a
yeah.
whole? I mean, if they left the masonry alone and just added the lap siding above that, is that,
Yeah.
We're
kind
we're objecting to the cement lap siding covering up existing.
Existing brick.
okay, so if
Exterior
it's higher
brick.
than that, it's okay in your department's
Yes.
opinion?
It's
But if covering
it's an
the-
alteration, it's not original material if we're adding an elevated roof.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have very good information about the cement lap siding in terms of color or any of those things, so we're not particularly comfortable with how we're able to describe it. But as we look at this and we look at the existing facade, it appears to us that a portion of the east facade and a portion of the north facade would be covered by cement lap siding. And so we don't think that if you look back to 2018, where you said that the character defining features will be retained and that the alterations will be compatible with and preserve the historic character of the building, it is a judgment call for you whether cement lap siding is appropriate for some parapet wall above, but we don't think a finding can be made that putting lap siding over existing brick is compatible with the historic character.
Okay, can I ask another question, just on
Yeah.
this drawing here itself? I mean, to me, it looks like they're adding 3 more windows above there as well, and that is changing things, and I'm just trying to get clarity of where change is acceptable and where it isn't, and I'm just not quite clear on that,
I think originally, if there's at least one or two of those windows.
was in the
from way
one
back,
way
get the
back.
mid
Okay,
brick
and I
over.
may have
I
missed
believe.
that. I
I'll
didn't
have
think
anybody
I
correct
saw
me,
that,
but
but
I thought when looking at the photos from
At some
old
point.
building, you can see here.
If you can go back to
One.
2018.
no, that's
Sign.
not, that's just
That's
a
a sign,
sign.
never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I didn't look at it closely. Okay, that's a sign, never mind.
Now, if you could go back to the plans that were approved in 2018.
They
Oh,
were in
there
there.
were windows. Okay,
Yeah.
I missed that
So
there. Okay, I see. Okay, thank you.
And they do kind of consistently with the front, the north view. of
Right,
those
and I
windows.
agree with that. I just am
Yeah.
trying to understand where it's okay and where it isn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you want to go back to one of the existing photographs, Dustin. And what we're trying to point out is if we can't tell from the plans if the plan is to bring down cement lap siding
Down there.
and to cover up this
Right.
brick. We believe doing that is not it's an alteration that's not compatible with the historic character of the building. If there's something if this gets elevated and there's some sort of parapet wall or something here, that's an addition or alteration, but it's not a matter of covering up existing character-defining material. So we would like some clarification whether the roof over the tenant space is being raised, and then what the purpose of having an overhead door is, and then clarification of whether the carport structure that's been on 3 of the previous plans is going to be built or not going to be built. So by our count, this is the 4th different plan for this east building that's come before the board, and none of them have been carried out yet. So those are our main questions, is whether the existing masonry is going to be covered up, whether the roof elevation is going to be raised, in which case we're talking about cement lap siding above the current roof elevation, and then what the purpose is of having the overhead door, and then whether the carport that's been shown on previous plans is going to be built or not. So
Okay.
with that, we'd be open to any questions, or what we tried to do in the packet was to put the plans in chronologically by date as to when they came before the board and what they consisted of, so that you could compare what was proposed in 2017, what was proposed in 2018, and what's being proposed now.
Okay. Any other comments from the group? Yes, do we have Mr. Wilson's?
Yeah, I think we have.
Speak?
Who do we?
Yeah, all right, you guys want me to answer those questions now? So let's address the lap siding first. The structure that you see, the rooftop structure, is actually proposed to be built inside of the existing masonry walls. So the new structure would be completely inside all of the existing masonry walls and would elevate above what is there. There are no plans to cover any of the existing masonry. This drawing we're looking at, it does appear to show that, but I believe the architect's just trying to illustrate that structure is inside of the existing masonry walls.
I saw it as inset, and wasn't sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, okay. So, okay,
So is the roof height itself being elevated?
Yes, the roof height, the roof that's inside that building right now is completely junk and needs to completely come off. And so we are proposing to build a completely, almost a new structure inside with the roof height to match the other side of the yoga studio.
So visually, it would come across and, the roof heights or the height of the lap siding would match the top of the other parts of the building.
Correct.
okay, so not covering up anything, all right.
Correct.
Let's see here,
On the lap siding, I think there was a question of color or what that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're proposing to paint it in similar color that they painted the concrete headers and the black to match the trim with the existing building.
So when you're saying that this roof height is higher than the extension on 4th Street, so you're going to raise this to match up with that?
Correct.
Oh,
And then the cement lap siding would be painted black to match the concrete headers?
Yes.
Okay.
and then what about the purpose of having the overhead door, or, you know?
Yeah, the purpose of the overhead door is we're trying to stay consistent with what we did at the gym facility at Sharp Performance. Having those overhead doors allows the fresh air. You can open those up in the gym, and the fresh air on the nice days
Okay.
flows through the building and creates a nice environment to exercise.
Is that going to have windows in it, or what's the material?
It's a glass overhead door.
Okay.
It would look identical to what is on Sharp Performance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, what about the carport structure that was in previous plans?
So the carport structure that was, I believe that application was submitted by the previous owners. I think this is the first time Restore Properties has, if I remember right, submitted something for this.
Yeah, I think that's correct. It was all the previous owner's architect.
We put in the footings for the carport structure, and looking back at that, it was actually a raised bollard type footing that a cedar post sat on. We put those pillars in, and the first week we had 5 vehicles that ran into them. So it's just really, it's too tight for that carport to be there. There's not enough room with the parking lot. And trying to park a 5th car there with those in place, you really need to have a small vehicle, extremely small.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for clarifying some of those items for us.
Yeah, we couldn't tell for sure, but when we looked at the height of the staircase on the drawing, it looked like the height of the staircase was taller than what the existing building was today.
Right.
And so we haven't gotten to the actual building permit review to look at the structural things with the roof, but our building inspectors thought that the plan appeared that to remove and replace the roof and elevate it from where it is today. So I think that those clarifications satisfy staff as to the points that we thought needed to be clarified. And if we want to, just to reinforce that, if we want to indicate, or if you want to have as a condition that the black painted cement lap siding is acceptable as long as it doesn't cover any of the existing
So you
masonry.
don't necessarily, or we don't need to necessarily require them to submit a new application with these clarifications
No,
in it?
this is an opportunity to clarify that, and then so,
Sure.
if we look on page 9 of the findings that you made previously, if the exterior masonry is not being covered up, then the character defining features are being retained. It appears to us that if you have a glass door that's an overhead door, you're just providing additional natural light into the studio, and so having that as a glass will match the appearance of the existing windows and doors. And then the third one's a little more subjective, but I guess if you look at the concrete black header that's at the top of the building, we're basically just expanding the width of that, but leaving the masonry intact.
Okay.
So we think that with those clarifications, we think the 3 findings that you made in September 2018 could still be made about this alteration now that we've confirmed those 4 points.
Does this also satisfy your request about itemized list of what design elements previously approved are going to be carried out?
Yes,
Okay.
I think he has
Thought it did,
described
but-
what's
Okay.
going to be the same and what's different. And Mr. Wilson is correct that all previous drawings were submitted by Beaverly Architects and were submitted on behalf of Todd Michaelis. And this is the first plan that Restore Properties has had an opportunity to present, so.
Okay. All right then. So any other questions, clarifications from anyone? Okay.
In fairness to the,
Dustin, I've got a quick follow-up here. Dustin, are you able to pull up 63 of the, page 63 of the materials?
Yes, give me a moment here.
I don't know which one that is, but
I don't either, just wait.
they're not numbered.
So that top right there, okay. So Jacob, just to clarify that, the lap siding structure, are you saying that it actually is going to end up being the same height as right there? I think you might be on mute.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So even though the design doesn't show that it'll be the same height, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Caden. All right, any other comments, questions, clarifications? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve with the idea that if it did, that it doesn't cover any of the existing masonry.
Okay. So clarification to approve.
yes, with the condition, and we would
Any other?
make sure that the final plan involves only the cement lap siding above the existing roof elevation.
And the other specifics they've talked about, okay?
Do we need any other conditions on that regarding if there are major changes that come
Yeah,
back?
if you want to have your standard condition that if
Yeah.
we get to a building permit stage and we determine that there's been major modifications from what was presented to you, that we would determine whether that's something that we can approve or needs to be brought back to you. So it would be if you want to just refer back to the condition that you had on the last application, then that could be condition number 2,
Do you accept
if
that as
that's
part of your
acceptable
motion?
to Haley.
Haley? Yes, okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, motion carried.
Okay, we'll,
Thank you.
We'll get you a written summary of their action, Jacob, so you can move ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so now we're down to 3.3, application CC 21-6.
This one is fairly straightforward, but it involves the replacement, unlike Mr. Richardson's application where it was essentially like for like, but with different color. This is an awning that would be expanded in scope. And the application here is for a certificate of compatibility filed by Stephen Howard on behalf of Cozy Inn. And the request is to allow the installation of a new awning on the west facade of the Cozy Inn building. And we provided you with some background on the restaurant, which opened in 1922, and essentially the same configuration that it operates in now. One of the things that I was amazed with going back and looking at that, the size of the lot that it occupies is 20 by 44, so it's a pretty tight site. And back in 2003, this board reviewed a plan to add a new walk-up window, a fabric awning, 2 signs to the north side of the building. One of the reasons for that was that obviously there's limited interior serving area and seating, and they had a window on 7th Street, which the employees had to handle orders and exchange money over the grill, which they didn't like doing. So the window was moved from 7th Street, cut a new window in the north side of the building. And so that photo that Dustin's showing is what it looked like before the window was put in on the north side. And then these are the plans that were approved by the board in 2003. The other aspect of that was the board recommended approval of a outdoor seating area along 7th Street. And so Mr. Howard is working with Wichita Awning Company on a design for a new awning on the west facade of the building. The proposal is to replace the existing red and white striped awning with a new solid red awning that would extend across both the south window and the front entry door. And Mr. Howard believes that the existing awning is faded and the old style piping, and he believes that this new awning is more modern looking and appealing to the eye. So this awning would be 11 feet wide and 28 inches high with an 8-foot valance. And so the applicant's requesting this board approve the size and design of the proposed awning. And so if you look at it from the perspective that there's 20 foot of frontage on 7th Street, this would cover 11 feet of that 24-foot frontage and would cover the door, something that doesn't occur today. And so it's your role and responsibility to determine whether this replacement awning will conform with the standards and the design guidelines. We don't think the awning will interfere or cover up any decorative features. It will be vinyl fabric material that's durable and weather resistant. It will shade the west face of the building from the afternoon and evening sun, and we think the color is compatible with the building's red and white color scheme. So you could approve this replacement awning, or you could approve it with conditions, or you could postpone consideration, or you could deny the request. Following review of the application, any additional information that gets presented today, our recommendation would be to approve this with 2 conditions, and one would be that if there's any changes to design or materials approved by the design review board, these will be presented to the board staff to determine whether additional review is required, and that a minimum vertical clearance of 8 feet be maintained between the awning and the sidewalk.
Okay. Any comments, questions from the commission? No? All
We
right.
do have Mr. Stephen Howard here from Cozy Inn, if you have any questions of him.
Anything you'd like to add?
It's really coincidental.
I'll have you step up to the microphone and introduce yourself again.
Steve Howard from the Cozy Inn. I just think it's kind of coincidental that Mr. Richardson is doing the awnings in the same color
Yeah.
as I had not talked to him. And I think which the awning might be doing theirs because they came in one day as a customer and we were just talking, and so we drew up numbers, and then I remembered I needed to come to you guys and
Okay. All right.
see if it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Any
You're welcome.
questions for? Sure. No. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right then. Accept a motion on the matter from the group.
I'll make a motion that we accept with the condition that if there's any changes, major changes, that'd be brought back to staff.
Okay. Haley made the motion and
I'll second it.
Jennifer seconded. If no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign? All right, then. Motion moved. Then that brings us down to any administrative items or preliminary discussion items.
We don't have any administrative items under other business. I don't know if you were able to get to that, Dustin, I included in your packet just kind of as a brush up or refresher, that back when the design guidelines for downtown Salina were adopted, we put together what was called a design review matrix, and we tried to outline for the benefit of people in the downtown area those things that require full board review and those things that could be done administratively just by staff. And I think one of the things that we would, that we've been kind of in a gray area on is awnings. And so, looking at the past cases, I found 2 cases dealing with Mr. Richardson's building on Iron where the awnings were brought before this board. And then I found another case where Mr. Berger approved a replacement administratively. So
Do you recall, did that have anything to do with the, were they the
it
same?
could have been the fact that
change in
it was,
color or
there's no
anything?
change in color.
Okay.
That could have been it, but that was part of, so if you just look at this, obviously, if you're building a new building, if you're building an accessory structure, an example of that is the Sonic Drive-In is in the Business Improvement District, and they constructed a accessory storage building there on their site, and that was reviewed by this board. If you're removing a garage or other accessory building, if you're doing a major exterior building alteration or an addition, if you're renovating the exterior facade or replacing a storefront or filling in a storefront or painting a previously unpainted facade, or you're putting up a new sign, if you're putting up a different sign in a different configuration, if you're putting up a new awning or canopy, I interpreted, because the configuration was different and the size was different, I interpreted what Cozy Inn was doing as a new awning or canopy and not just a replacement. And so this is the gray area. I think what Mr. Richardson was doing was he was essentially replacing an existing awning with a new awning that's not really in a different configuration. So it was kind of a gray area. And so one of the things we just wanted to go over is to just find what the board's comfort level was and expectation as to something like Mr. Richardson's project. Is that something that you feel can be done administratively, as long as it's in the same configuration? Or do you think if there's a color scheme change or something that's something that you want brought to this board to see?
I think I would like to see if there's a color scheme change. I mean, most of us probably would agree that we don't want to see a bright neon green canopy out downtown. So if that's the case, I mean, I would like to see it.
Okay, because from what I can tell, the only ones that have been done administratively is if there was like a burgundy canopy and it was all faded and it was replaced with another burgundy canopy on the same frame.
And that, I think, something or in a very similar shade, maybe there's a slight shade difference, but it's basically the same awning. I think that could be very well done administratively, but if it's going too far off on the shade, I don't know. I mean,
For most things, anything that's maintenance or repair of an existing feature, that's something that we're gonna review administratively. If a building is crumbling and it needs stabilization, that's something we're gonna authorize administratively. But we just wanted to make sure that all the board members just had a copy of this matrix. You can see that there's a lot of things on there that are subject to review, and there's a fairly short list of what we would approve administratively. But we kind of went through what's major, what's minor, and some of the downtown groups wanted to make sure that if there was something that was minor or maintenance or repair, that's something that could be done quickly and not something that they'd have to wait for board approval of. But I just wanted to try to gauge the board if you, if the two awning cases that you had this afternoon, is that something that you would feel more comfortable if came to you before they happen?
Well,
I guess I'm of a different opinion that if it's really configured the same and it's a color change that staff has been, their recommendations have always been something we followed in the color
Yeah.
usually.
I mean, we're supposed to, if we make a decision, we're supposed to follow the same criteria that
we
you
are.
would. So
Right.
I would think that if there was something that was neon green or something that was,
something too extreme.
that was a flashing awning or something like that, that would not be something we would,
You would say no.
we would, yeah,
Yeah.
we'd say.
Right.
What way that works is if it's something that, like, no, I don't feel comfortable with that, I'm saying no, then they can appeal my no to you.
Okay.
And so that's the way it works. There's certain things that we can do administratively, but if it comes to us and we say, no, we're not comfortable approving that, they can appeal our denial to you. So,
I just feel like both the Cozy Inn request and the Brian Richardson's request, we didn't have questions because it's really actually very straightforward. And I think staff in those straightforward things where it's virtually the same, that I think that should be left to the staff to decide because, I just think that you're having to follow the same things we are. And I just think that's a waste of people's time, to be honest.
The Cozy Inn one wasn't virtually the same. It was like.
A
Well,
little longer.
it was a little longer, but I just looked at that. I mean,
It still
Yeah.
wasn't, like, I agree with you, it still wasn't a real material
yeah.
change. It
Yeah.
was just,
So, but
but-
the Brian Richardson one for sure, I would say that I don't think we need to see,
Right.
Yeah.
because the guidelines are the guidelines, so.
yeah.
It's
And
kind of the
we-
same way with the sidewalk sign, outdoor furniture, and planters flower pots. I mean, I would think that for the most part, you guys wouldn't let them have something.
Yeah, there's
outlined.
guidelines for that,
Yeah.
and I've got to go back and look at that, but I do believe that we discussed that with you previously, and you expressed, or previous board had expressed that they were comfortable with staff approving sidewalk furniture, sandwich board signs, those types of
Yeah.
things. And
I would agree.
some of it, it's just a matter of time, and then it's just a matter of work, putting a packet together, writing a staff report for something that's minor and making you come in and meet is maybe not a good use of everyone's time if it's a pretty straightforward thing. But we just wanted you to have a copy of this matrix, and the design guides were adopted in 2008, and Mr. Berger had been administering those and everything since that time, and he is retired, and so Dustin and I are stepping in new, and we're trying to make sure that we're doing things right and meeting your expectations, so.
yes, I think,
So that's all the business that we have for you. We are not anticipating a meeting till the second Thursday in June. I don't have the exact date in front of me. Maybe Margie has it, but
is now the acceptable time to bring up just a question about some signage downtown?
mm-hmm.
The underneath Big Nose Kate's, there's is it Fugo or something?
Fuego. Yeah.
Fuego. Yeah, it's kind of blocked that entire,
Yeah, they're going to get a letter from us telling them not only that sign, but the one they put on the back.
oh, I didn't even notice about
Yeah,
that.
so they have one in the back too that they did not, and they're covering too much of the window
Okay.
and everything, and part of the reason they're doing that is because they didn't talk to us or get a permit to put that sign up, so they're getting a letter from us telling them they don't have permission to have that sign, and so now the weather's nice, and if I ever get free time, been tasked with doing my downtown walk with my clipboard, and so I'll be walking around looking for those things, but the Fuego's a new business, and they're coming in to see me about a drinking establishment license, so I'll be having that conversation with them.
Okay, yeah. yeah, it appeared, unless somehow it included all those windows all the way across.
Yeah, and you're not supposed to cover up all your windows with
Yeah.
signage in the downtown area. So that was one of the guidelines so that people walking by could see in
Yeah.
and encourage display. So yes, we're aware of that one. And there's a couple others that we'll identify on our walk. There's another one that we're not sure about, but the Ad Astra put kind of a sign up on the second floor facing towards Ash. So we were going to be looking at that one too, that this board reviewed and approved the Salina 67401 sign. And so it seemed to be consistent that they should have brought the other one before you as well. So we're going to be visiting with them about that, but we want to compile our list before so that we're treating everyone the same. But
Okay.
yeah, it's not a good thing to cover up your entire window space with sign, and it may be too large square footage wise anyway, so.
Okay, thank you. I just was wondering about that.
Yeah. So just, and we don't know the exact timing, but just for your information, the owners of the Homewood Suites Hotel were finally able to acquire the former taxi cab building on Mulberry, and they've decided that they want to keep the building and use it for storage, but they wish to dress up its appearance substantially. And so I met with them about bringing an application to you sometime in June to review their plans for upgrading that building and what they're doing with that streetscape. So,
Okay.
and then they also, we consider the parking lot that's south of the hotel and Starbucks and Yaya's where the Taco John's was, that was a temporary lot. And if you've noticed, the one on the Santa Fe side's way up here, and the one on Fifth Street's like 2 feet lower, and they're going to try to go in there and level all that and bring it across, and they'd be bringing a plan to you for constructing a permanent, more attractive lot there. So don't know the exact timing on those, but those are two developments related to the whole hotel project that are going to be coming to this board sometime this summer.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dean.
So I believe that's all we have for you this evening, unless you have any other further questions of us.
I don't, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Move,
I'll second it.
seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Appreciate your attendance at today's meeting, and thanks, Mr. Butler, for joining us. We had our full membership here.
Yeah. Been a while.